All right, John, we good? Ooh, that's loud. One more second. You say we're perfect? All right, let's go. All right, everybody, welcome to RITSec. Hey, buddy, how you doing? Please head on over to signin.ritsec.club. Also, like, it's the end of week 6. What's going on? My life's in shambles. So please sign in, and while you're doing that, let's give some thanks to our sponsors. We love them. Without them, we can't do all the fun stuff we do. Swag. So remember a few weeks ago we put out the interest form. This is the real form. If you want to buy swag, you can go here and actually buy it through the storefront. You can ship it to your house if you want, but monies, and you can ship it to here, and we'll give it to you for free. So whatever you want to do. We got the hoodie and the two shirts that are pretty cool. I like the hoodie. I highly recommend it. I see a lot of people doing it, and every time I say nice hoodie. So. All right, research presentations. We've been a little lacking on research presentations recently. So if you have anything at all that you maybe have thought about working on, make a presentation on it. No one's going to judge you for presenting something that you're not a perfect expert in. None of us are experts in anything. I'm up here educating you, and I am far from an expert. So just make something, submit it at presentations@ritsec.club, and you too can get a pretty cool lanyard for presenting.
That and I'll love you forever.
And what?
I'll love you forever.
He'll love you forever, but what's the real value there? Loudon, be loud.
So I guess I'm presenting from right here, but my interest group, now that it's midway through the semester, is started again. So we are the RITSec Physical Security Interest Group. We've dealt a lot with locks in the past, but if anyone knows anything else and wants to come my way and maybe present, that would be cool. But yeah, it's from 1 to 2 in Air Gap on Mondays, and it's a real blast. Come out if you're even remotely interested. And dang, I can't yell into the mic.
Why? What do you need? Oh, do you need? How about we didn't? Yeah, we're pretty good. You were pretty loud. You did good.
Mention anything, Jake? You're good. No.
Yeah.
1 to 2 is sort of inconvenient for probably most people, but it works for all of us, so just deal with it.
Wow. Wow.
It might fit your schedule, but if it doesn't, skip class.
Hey, we can't officially endorse skipping class. Officially. All right, follow us on social media. All of our announcements and stuff also go out there on the Instagrams, the Facebooks, and the tweets. Adriana is pretty cool about sending some stuff out. I think there should be some more memes, but that's just my personal opinion. But there's always cool pictures of some of the presenters and all the fun extracurricular stuff that we do. Wait, really? Never mind. All right, disclaimer, yada, yada, yada. All the stuff we do here is for educational. We want you to learn. Be good, not bad. Then we got Elliot coming to talk about the Easy One Challenge. Get this light theme out of here. My eyes hurt. Please make it stop.
Ban the light theme.
Hey, do I need a mic or?
You can knock into this one, and I'm gonna Vanna White you here. Okay.
So, hi, I'm Elliot Fisher. Go by Elphys on the board. Here to talk about Easy One, because that was the less solved of the easies, and all the mediums and hards were either Wireshark more or regex more, or not code more. So, yeah, and also, light theme's better than dark theme. Changed my mind. I mean, I'm on top of the board right now, so I think that says something.
We can fix that.
Ooh. Yeah. But yeah, so start as always, take a look at the tactical challenge description. And it says take a look at the error connections. So we do that using our favorite command, netstat-tac-l. And we see a couple ports open, 1, 2, 3, 4, which if you go through the other challenge descriptions, you see that one's for medium 2. And then we see some for SSH, which because you can SSH into this box. And then we see a lot ending in quad 9. So let's start connecting to them. So SSH. Didn't work. So maybe it's easier than we think. So what's easier than SSH? Netcat. Oh, hey, that worked. I got a prompt back. It said, welcome to easy. Well, thanks, but that's not a flag. On to the next one. So we do it to 1 quad 9. And that's a flag, or at least the start of one. Woo! So we do that 2 more times, we get the remaining parts of the flag. Put that together, we have our flag. Easy one, done. Woo!
Yeah, I made the hard one, so I'm going to talk about it. Ah, cool. Yeah, code. It's scary, right? Yeah, dude, Scapy is wild. There we go. All right, code. So, Cho came up to me, is like, we need hard challenge, you network pretty good. So I say, okay, I make hard challenge. Last year, I think at this point, Ian and I worked on the hard challenge for networking the previous year. And the way we did it was the last bit in every DNS request made up a string. And we're like, that's kind of hard, and it's like, really, did anyone find it? I don't think many people did. I think like maybe one, and that like required a lot of hints. So we need to dial it back a little bit. So Troy's like, what about like a super big ARP? And I was like, well, how about just only ARPs? So while I was kind of doing this, I just had Wireshark running in the background with Rickroll playing, just because. So for those of you that found the flag, you'll understand what that means. So the hardware source address for all of the ARP packets, if you were to put that together, you get a pretty cool flag. So if we flip on over to Wireshark, there we go, and we filter on. So another fun story, my code is supposed to distribute the ARP packets like evenly, like every like 956 packets or so. They're not. They're all at the top for some reason, and I couldn't figure out for the life of me why they would only go to the top, but that's okay. So if we go to the ARP packets, and we start looking here, this was just a random one that happened to be in there. So we're ARPing for 192.64.119, 183. Anyone know what that is? It's ritsec.club. There we go. Yeah, there you go. So if you kind of look over here, it does some of the translations for you. So if you were to step through these, you could find that the flag was never going to give you up. There we go. Yep, I crack myself up all the time. Me joke, me fun, good, huh? All right. You get to listen to me more because I'm presenting this week. Woohoo! Yeah. What? The meme today? What? I don't hear you. Oh yeah. Wow. Yeah, you should do some research presentations. So the head of research isn't always presenting. All right. What? At club. All right. So a little bit of recap. For the past kind of couple technical education stuff, I went and we had a break for like the career fair and stuff, because that's important too. But based on the technical stuff, we kind of started with Linux. Jack told us some cool things about Linux. We moved on to Windows. John did some registry stuff that was black magic. What's the GUI? And then we had Weissman chuck markers at your face. But like, how do we put that all together? So we can do services. So here we are now. So it's kind of a logical progression. We like to think that we know what we're doing. So what is a service? In Linux, we call these daemons. And basically, they're just a process that run independent of login, right? So if I were to turn on a machine that has set up to run, SSH and web, I don't have to log in to get those to start. Like, it can boot up remotely, and then those services will be listening on the right ports and all of that, which is pretty cool. Yeah. So like TCP/22, that's SSH, often listens on a port. There are some things that don't, but we're not going to talk about those. Windows services, Windows Hard, me Linux, but I'm told they work the same as Unix services. I had John give me a rundown this morning because he Windows, but we'll move on to that. So how does Linux do the daemon? We got a wonderful picture of Matt Damon here. So services are controlled by the init process, which has a PID of 1, right? So every process is then spun off that process. So that goes back on to like not having to log in. That boot process, the init process, PID 1 starts, and it'll spawn off those service processes. Whereas when you were to log in, that would then spawn its own process. So these are independent of the login, which is pretty cool. Systemd is pretty dank. Systemctl action service, so systemctl start nginx, systemctl stop Apache 2, all that fun stuff. So you can get some information like status, is this running or not? Disable, like if you're running like default Ubuntu and you bring it on RIT campus, cups is running, and every time you turn on your computer, it just starts adding printers, and you want to kill yourself? Yeah.
What if my name is Scott and I don't like system?
We're going to talk about systemd today, because I like systemd. All right, Windows. So we talked about that PID 1, that init process for Linux. So Windows has this service control manager, right? So this kind of is a core Windows thing, right? So if you're running services here, they all have to report to the SCM and like follow its rules, right? So there's standards that say you have to like talk to me in a certain kind of way, a certain fashion. I'm sure there's documentation on that. I don't Windows. Yeah, enjoy your GUI. I left that from last year because I thought it was really funny. So you can do some stuff through the command line, which is shocking because Windows and GUIs and all that, but it's very similar to systemd. You can do sc, start, stop, query, all the fun stuff, and then the service name. So I guess we can't bash on Windows that much because it's literally the same syntax. And your computer has a virus. All right, Linux. So back to the fun stuff. So all of the configuration files for your services are in the /etc directory. So like etc nginx, etc sshd, etc totally legitimate service that isn't red team, all that fun stuff. If you're looking for a config file, it's probably here. So they usually have the .conf ending, but because Linux, those don't really matter. But it makes it a little bit easier to follow, as if anything was just a name. By having the .conf, it's easier to know that that's a configuration file. So some things that are daemons, they have that .d at the end, or just d, like the SSHD, kind of denoting all the fact that it is a daemon in a service. Back to Windows. So I think Windows is hard enough. The registry is like just an acid trip in Alice in Wonderland. I don't really know what's going on. But apparently, you can set some configuration options through regedit. But apparently, it usually breaks things. So again, going back to that services, .exe, .msc, whatever it is it two different things? It is. My bad. John, is it exe or MSC for services? Hey, Windows people. Is it services.exe or services.msc? Cool. I have to fix that. So to use that, you can like that whole GUI, you can like right-click, start, stop, all the fun stuff, remove. Yeah, registry, things break. Again, Windows hard. So kind of getting some of the important ones that we kind of see and use every day in the wild. We have DNS. So you're like, hey, what's the IP for Google.com kind of thing, the phone book. You've all heard it if you've taken a second level networking class. If you haven't, you will, but you also get some here. SSH, we talked about during Linux, how you can remote into a box via shell. FTP, transferring files to a share somewhere on Linux usually. We got some mail. Like Google, Gmail, but different. RDP, you can remote into Windows boxes and get that full like GUI experience and like kick out the other users because it's not multi-session, boo Windows. DHCP, how your computer gets IP addresses and all that stuff if you don't statically set them. Databases for storing information, web servers like Apache and Nginx, so you can see all the cool content on the internet and look at all those dank memes. Some more file sharing, but more Windows-ish based. And then we have the bad word. If you were here earlier, I was playing some Star Wars. That's through Telnet. We'll talk about that later. TLDR, Telnet bad. So DNS. Does anyone still have a phone book? Wow, really? Yeah. Wow, that's insane. Like I don't even have a home phone since I was like 4.
They just
I,
sort of show up.
my parents must burn them or something because we don't have phone books. Like the only memory I have with a phone book was being a really small child, and my dad didn't have like a high chair for me to sit in, so he'd stack them up until he got a high chair, and I sat on phone books. Random, weird tangent. Don't worry about it. Anyway, so say you want to go to. Hey, anyone know what this IP address is? Hey, it's ritsec.club. There we go. So no one wants to remember like 4 different numbers for every site they go to. So DNS, what? Sorry, is there any questions? Okay. Sorry, I thought I heard someone say my name. My bad. So DNS allows us to look these up without having to remember everything, because like, who remembers their grandma's phone number? No one. We just type grandma and the magic happens. So the same thing works for the internet. We type ritsec.club, the magic happens. We get this cool fancy address, and we can see all of the, I guess, important stuff on the RITSec website. I guess workplace is more important, but that's okay. So there's 2 like kind of main functionalities between. There's recursive and iterative. Recursive is pretty cool because you ask one server and they kind of handle it all. Iterative, it all comes back to you. So the first server you ask is like, I don't have that, but you can talk to them. And that chain can take like a long time. So like it's just better for the user, like the client machine to do it just once and have it all handled recursively to the backend. But iterative is also an option. You'll talk about this a lot in net services, like 6 weeks or something like that. It's wild. So there's different records in here. So like start of authority. So like the start of authority for .club would say, this is where RITSec is, because RITSec.club, there's the .com, the .net, and every TLDR that's been, TLD, wow, I internet too much. TLD that's been made in like the last 10 years. We have like those crazy stuff like sucks. Like I can't imagine who thought that was a good idea. So a name, so that's the direct link for this is my IP, this is my name. We have quad A, that's for IPv6. Maybe one day we'll get there, let's hope. MX records, so if you're running a mail server on the domain, so it's not sending, ooh, hey, I have stuff 2 days ago. Anyway, Ubuntu calendar sucks. Mail records for your domain, and then CNAME. So I can refer to something as a different name on my domain and then have it forward to the real name on the domain. Yeah. Again, you'll learn a lot about this in net services. SSH, again, we talked about this Linux week, remote access to a box. So we're not going to really go over what it does, but some of the important things about it, like don't permit root login. If you don't need to, you should have a user with root privileges and not being able to log in as root. Because if someone can log in as root, that's it, game over, you lose. So some ways to stop that. X11 forwarding, if you really want to open some GUI across an XSH session, you can do that. But again, Linux command line, it's pretty awesome. Banners, greeting messages. So like if you're to log into the system, it can like leave you a message. I think the CS department like has a banner like, hey, follow all the cool rules and whatever. So you can leave messages to your friends when they log into your system. Authorize key files. So I think we talked about in Linux, but you can, instead of using a username and password, you can use a username and a key. A private key, public key pair, crypto hard. I just know keys work, so I can put my private key on a box and use my private key. Crypto bad. I can put my public key on a box and use my private key to auth to it, because that knows it's me instead of passwords and like typing stuff over the internet. Keys are better. So you could like disable passwords altogether on SSH login and just use keys, so they can't be like brute forced. If you've ever like had a public IP and like looked at how much scanning happens, it's really funny when you're running like SSH, because people just try and hit you like automatically. It's nuts. Cool, we talked about keys. All right, moving on, DHCP, Dora. So I've literally like had several interview questions on this, and I've just regurgitated Dora, and it's worked out for me, so that's pretty cool. So like when you bring your computer onto RIT's network, it doesn't have an IP address, but RIT runs a DHCP service. So they say, hey, here's your IP, this is how you get to the internet. It probably happens in your house too. You probably get a 192.168 address, unless you're a cool home labber and do some static stuff, like a lot of the people here do. Usually DHCP just kind of is automatically set up on your router, so you can internet easy. You can also send some things like, hey, use quad 1 for my DNS instead of whatever my ISP is. Use quad 8. Or use one that I set up myself, because I do records and stuff locally. and then net forwards. So you can have DHCP say where to go for DNS. You can also do things like your default gateway. So if you have some wonky routing going on, DHCP can tell you where the default gateway is. So the process, DORA, again, literally have spit this out on interviews and like gotten stuff from them. So the client kind of shouts out, if you remember Weissman, he stands there with his boot box. He's like, give me an IP address. And then the server quietly goes, hey, do you want this IP address? That's your offer, discover and offer. The client will then request that IP address, like, yeah, I probably want that IP address. We're not shouting anymore because we're not broadcasting. This is all unicast stuff. And then the server's gonna be like, cool, you have this IP address, go internet. So like it's a pretty like fundamental thing for networking, and we have to have that running as a service. Again, it's pretty good to know. DORA, I just spit it out. It's been burned into my brain. All right, FTP. So we can do some file transferring stuff on Linux. So by itself, it's not secure. You can like secure it with SFTP, which is pretty cool. You can do some configuration on stuff to make sure it's all encrypted and your passwords are not in plain text and all your files aren't coming plain text. But just FTP, someone could be sniffing your traffic and just kind of grab that file too. And we don't want that, so security good, SFTP. Loudon, do you have a question? No, okay. So there's some things like anonymous login, which is really cool, like, but I don't understand why that exists. Like I can just say, yeah, I'm anonymous, give me all your stuff. And if it's configured that way, you just get access to the server. What's up?
The reason that exists was because before HTTP was as much of a thing as it is today, for literally everything. If FTP was believed, hey, you want to download all this Linux source code? Here, go to ftp.linux.org or whatever, and log in anonymously.
All right, so there's your use case, but like from a security perspective, God, what were they thinking? So some other misconfigurations, you could like decide that you're the owner or that someone else on that system is an owner when you upload it. You can also schmod it, so say you were to be able to upload a script that executes, you could change its permissions to execute and do all your malware and just like pwn the system for you. So if you're ever setting up an FTP server, make sure you kind of go through some of these things and make sure they're configured properly. Yeah. Mail. Is anyone like old enough to remember the mail time? Or is it just me? There we go. Okay, we got like a couple old people, but the majority of you are so young. God, I loved Blue's Clues as a child. Yeah, it wasn't really the same without Steve. Yeah. So mail, I have a very vivid memory of either like freshman or sophomore year listening to Micah give a talk on mail and like open mail relays, and he just like used RIT's relay to send mail. It was wild. It was way over my head, but it's like burned into me that Micah does mail, even though he likes to deny it. So these open relays, you can kind of use them to send stuff. It's really cool for like social engineering and stuff. A couple years ago, I played a prank on my sister. I sent an email from her principal, but it was actually me. Yeah, it wasn't good, but so mail is pretty cool if you like know how to utilize the Linux side of it right and not just go to gmail.com. The full mailbox attack, you can yeet so many files that it just fills up and crashes and then no one gets email. That's a type of denial of service. Again, we do good things, not bad. Don't crash mail servers. A lot of like good ones will know to like not do that, but if there's a poorly configured mail server, you're fine. Don't eat a bunch of mail at it. It'll crash. All right. So you want to be able to view your desktop on Linux and stuff. So there's some cool things. Also Windows, I guess, RDP. So you can kind of have tunneled desktop views through something like VNC, X11, or RDP. So when we talked back with SSH, we talked about X11 forwarding. We can get that window. But then there are things like VNC where you can get the entire desktop environment. So if you really like that little taskbar on your left side or whatever, that's cool. Learn to use SSH, it'll be more useful. But this is still pretty cool. Sometimes VNC doesn't require authentication, and you can just get desktops from people. So make sure you do some configuration there for authentication. RDP, don't put RDP on your public box. Again, with the SSH, people will just hammer it and try and brute force your password. It's not good. I did that for about a month, and I looked at my logs, and it was quickly turned off. X11, this is cool because you can tunnel the windows through SSH and all the encryption and stuff like that. So you can type Firefox on an SSH connection, and you'll get your Firefox window through the SSH tunnel. RDP, you can use like the R desktop client on Linux, or you can just type remote desktop if you're on Windows, and you can remote access box there and get that full desktop environment. There's other things like WinRM and stuff like that for that command line stuff, but Windows people do that, not me. All right, databases. I really like this one. So MySQL and Mongo are like the two main ones that we use. There's also Marie stuff. There are a lot more, but you're most likely to see these two. Again, poor configuration. If they don't like sanitize input, you can like execute commands and stuff like that. You've probably heard of SQL injection through websites. That's kind of a vulnerability with the website connecting to the database and allowing the users to send whatever commands they want if you do it right. So make sure you do stuff like sanitize your input and make sure that stuff doesn't happen. Again, the configuration with like default or no passwords. I know why it exists, but like why does it exist? So make sure you're putting passwords on all your things. TLDR. Sharing is caring. God. All right, so wrapping up, I think this is my last one. If not, there's more. Web, everyone goes to websites and stuff. If you haven't spun up like an Nginx or an Apache server yet at your time here, you definitely will. And it's pretty easy to learn too. There's different ways you could do it. You can put like Docker files and stuff like that. But anyway, you can serve web pages on a server. We're gonna talk about this later in a few weeks. Also, you'll have a whole semester in CSEC 380 talking about web. Yay. Yeah, let's drop an F in the chat for all of our people on homework 3. I feel bad for you guys. I remember the days. Some common problems, we talked about SQL injection, also cross-site scripting. We can drop scripts into websites that'll execute for us. And giving people the ability to execute code on our machines is bad, so make sure you configure stuff to not do that. There's some permissions. Your htaccess has no power here. So saying who can actually access that website and stuff based on IPs and users and all that fun jazz. Web shells, if you can like backdoor a web server to have a shell in it that lets you execute commands, again, bad. If your web server is running as root, you win. It's pretty easy to do this. If you've ever tried to do this on your own, like I have, Apache will be like, please don't do this. This is a bad idea. Don't run as root. But you can still do it. By default, things will run as like HTTP, I forget. What's the HTTP user? Anyone? I'm having a brain fart. var data, that's it. I don't know by that, but you can change the how it's configured to run as different users for some reason. Again, don't do it. There was more. SMB, so you can do, these are like network shares for like Windows and Linux. You can mount shares, whereas FTP is just like single transfer. Here, I can mount a remote thing to my device and basically treat it like it's there, but it's over the network. By default, Samba and NFS don't require authentication. Again, bad. Passwords, good. Protect your stuff. But if you're doing things like pen testing, it's a thing to remember. Keep in mind, things have default passwords. They're pretty easy to look up, and a lot of times you'll come across them. SMB is also just generally bad. Anyone know what MS-1710 is to my younger folks? No? Yeah? Younger people? Yeah, what's up? Remember MS-1710? Blue Origin. Close. Nope. Anyone? Oh. Nope. Blue keeps the RDP one. Eternal Blue. Yeah, all these blues, right? Yeah, that was the Eternal Blue. Oh my goodness. Bum, bum, ba-dum. Nope, it's the room one. We're good. So these are some of the commands you can. Oh my goodness. These are some of the commands you can run on Linux to kind of mount these things to give you access to them. All right, Telnet. You remember at the beginning I said Telnet bad. The TLDR behind that is nothing is encrypted, including your username and password. So if you were to Telnet to a box and someone was sniffing, your password would be in plain text. There is 2 uses for this. One of them being ASCII Star Wars, which I had playing on the way in. And the other one, you could do some like manual mail stuff. So you can like telnet to port 25 on a mail server, and you can do like the manual, like the EHLO stuff. I think we had to do that for some class. I actually don't remember. But other than that, don't use Telnet. Use SSH. It's the same thing, but better with encryption. It's like having a locked gate, but no fence, right? You can just walk around it. All right, detecting services. So I just kind of blew through a ton of stuff. So some kind of ways to do this. I think everyone at this point has used MenMap. It's like the first lab in CSEC 101. But there's some cool flags like taxsv, ticket to services, so you can get information on what service is running on which port, depending how well firewalled and stuff like that it is. You can add port ranges, you can add specific targets, you can add whole networks for stuff. But for stuff like the demo challenges, you'll know the IP of your box, I think. So you can do some scanning that way and target your box specifically, look what services you have running, what versions of those services they are. A lot of older versions, you can find vulnerabilities for them. I see you guys like typing stuff down. I'll post the slides. You don't have to worry about it. Remind me to post the slides. I've forgotten the past couple weeks. Yeah, Google things like default creds I was mentioning before, those just exist and they're often configured. So if you can remember to search for it, you can get the default creds. Shodan is pretty cool. If you've never used Shodan before, you can just like put in an IP in or a domain and it'll have just scanned it usually for you in the last X amount of time. And it'll tell you exactly what's vulnerable on it and how it's vulnerable. So it's really good for you as someone trying to lock your stuff down. If you go see your stuff there that's vulnerable, you know to patch it. But also as like an attacker, you're like, wow, look at all these things with default creds that I just found. So use it for good, not for evil. Shodan like has the free tier and also like the cool tier with stuff. You get the cool tier for free if you sign up with your RT email. Do that. All right, that's about all I have for education. So we're going to slide into demo time.
All right, so everything is, as usual, posted in the demo help. Credentials are easy one, and password is RISEC. So download the VM, and yeah, start solving challenges.